Done by Noon podcast, episode number 22. Today we're going to talk about how to turn ideas into products.
You're listening to the Done by Noon podcast, a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to achieve more by noon than others in a full day. Serial entrepreneur Dave Ruel and his co-host Chris Lopez share the strategies that will help you optimize your productivity, performance, and lifestyle so you can reach new heights in your business and life. So if you're ready to become the most efficient and effective entrepreneur you know, you're in the right place. Welcome to the show.
Lopez.
What's happening, brother? What's happening?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm great. Costa Rica is, we've got beautiful weather right now. We have no lockdown because we're not in Canada, unfortunately, or fortunately. I'm looking forward to having a great 2021.
That's crazy because I was talking to Matt Gallant yesterday. He's in Panama, and now he has like 4 hours of freedom per week.
4 hours of freedom. Because they've implemented curfews and everything.
Yeah, it's crazy. So Matt he lives in a nice freaking penthouse.
Oh, I know.
Panama.
I've seen his penthouse. We did a Zoom call one time, and he showed me the view and everything. It's beautiful.
It's fantastic. It's 4 stories. He has an elevator in his penthouse. that's it. So yeah, and so Matt is pretty he has all the space and everything, so he's pretty dialed. But still, it can only get out of the house for 4 hours. But it was telling me the number of cases. It's 3 million. I think 3 something million. People in Panama, and there's 5,000 cases or whatever. I can't remember. It's it was insane. It's pretty crazy. So anyway, it's pretty drastic. But hey, I don't know. As we're recording this, obviously things probably have changed. But no, we're still good here. It's not bad.
No, I know, and it's the winter too. Who wants to go out anyway, right?
That's the thing, man. You've been to my house, so I've got plenty of space in my house. That's the
yeah.
That's the thing that
you've also got plenty of snow outside of your house as well, if I remember correctly.
I got tons of snow, so yeah, no, it's great. But the river is frozen. Can play hockey there.
Oh yeah,
it's great. I'm drinking cold coffee right now. So at Christmas, my daughters offered me a mug that says "Best Dad Ever." Very how much stereotypical that could be, right? And so it's a huge mug. So I filled it up in the morning, but then I work, and I'm never done with my cup of coffee before 2 in the afternoon. So I'm drinking cold coffee right now.
Oh yeah. That happens to me all the time. I mean, it's you get so busy and everything, and you forget about that cup of coffee, and then it's, oh no, there's the cup of coffee there. My mug.
But it's huge. It's worth I think it contains 3 coffees. Huge mug. It's a huge mug. We should do a Done by Noon mug, the ultimate Done by Noon mug.
That would be great. My mug right now says "Death Before Decaf."
I know. You showed me that yesterday.
Did I show you that? Yeah.
Yeah. So is that from a coffee shop or a coffee company?
Yeah, it's from. So there's a coffee /surf shop /BJJ /kettlebell gym across the street from my office. It's run by a friend of mine who the kettlebell part is because of me, because we were talking, and he wanted to incorporate kettlebells into he trains MMA fighters professionally or for a living. And so he opened a coffee shop here, and he wanted to turn it into an all encompassing thing of everything that he loves. So he loves coffee, he loves surfing, and he loves Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So he basically turned this space into all 3 of those things. And then I said, hey, I do some kettlebell stuff, or I think he found me online or something like that. And he asked me if I'd be willing to do some MMA or some kettlebell stuff with his fighters. And so he bought a bunch of kettlebells and turned it into a kettlebell space as well. So
boom, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
He's mixing all of his passion and his ideas into profitable business.
Speaking of ideas, that's exactly what he did. I mean, that's what he was. He basically said, I took all of the things that I loved and I put it into one spot.
Yeah, right. That's the thing, man. We're going to talk about ideas today, but idea management. I don't know about you, but it like it's not a struggle anymore for me, but it used to be a struggle because I did like when I remember when I started my own business, I wanted to insta act on pretty much everything. Everything all of a sudden I had a business so I could act on my ideas. And I was like, I sometimes like, holy shit, man, not everything is a business. Like that's the struggle as an entrepreneur sometimes. And if you have a creative brain, it's hard just to manage the overflow of ideas, right? Or just the ideas or making something that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I find that as an entrepreneur, you need a very good filter system and you need a good way of getting feedback on specific ideas without fully investing in them to
Yep.
determine whether or not the market actually wants that. And
That 100%.
yeah, so I think just like every entrepreneur that, if you're listening to this call, you might be one or you probably are one. You have to have a good filter system because ideas come and go. I mean, they come more often than they go. And it's like, what am I going to do with all of this stuff? So
It's I mean, that's why I created the idea box. If you've been using the planner, the idea box, like that's how it originated, because I had just too many ideas that I can actually execute. And that doesn't mean like full-fledged businesses or products. That meant like any type of ideas. And it was just clogging my brain. And I started the exercise of putting the overflow of ideas, or the ideas, my ideas that were worth, I would say, writing down into that idea box, and then doing a full curation of these ideas after my day, and then putting that and keeping the ones that really made sense. And you realize that eventually that most of them not don't make sense, but they're just ideas, they're thoughts. And at the end, I was storing my ideas and I was reviewing my ideas after 90 days. So that's what really got me disciplined with my ideas, with harnessing my crazy brain in some ways, that, hey, how can I store them so I know they're there, but then attend them later. And I realized, after 90 days, you realize that shit, most of these ideas still, like, I mean, I don't need to act on them, right? So giving yourself time to marinate is always a great idea to manage your ideas, because that's the thing, man. When you're a creative type, you're never going to run out of them. Like I've been, I'm like, even when I was a kid, that was always the struggle, but I didn't have a business to like act on. And now that, you have money at your disposition to work on ideas, it's like, fuck, sometimes it's not even worth it.
Yeah, you need a filter. I mean, so if you're just starting out in business, I think the speed of implementation is very important. Mm-hmm. But when you are established and you've got all these ideas running through your head and you need to determine what to act on, I think time is of the essence in terms of allowing these things to marinate, like what you said. So for somebody that is just beginning and they've got all these ideas, what do you think, like, what is there a process that you follow, or what's something that you do to make to know that the idea that you've got is something worth acting upon?
But that's what, exactly like you said, I use the idea box to curate so I use the idea box. I don't use it as much as I used to now, because I really train my brain to automatically filter ideas. And I use it now. I used to use it a lot. I remember my idea box was always full, and now like it's always pretty much empty, because my brain I trained it so it doesn't get excited about every single idea,
Yeah.
And I find places also to do that. Like I love masterminds, for example, and I love helping other entrepreneurs. Like I run a couple mentorship programs, and I love helping them with their businesses, because I can train that, I can flex that muscle there, but I don't have to actually execute on them. Like they're the ideas. So I love that, but I only come in like this to like work on ideas. And because that's kind of, I don't know, it's like for them, like they need that. And for me, it's like, I got an overflow that I just got afloat somehow. Right. Yeah. So yeah, but I mean, for me, definitely like the idea box, because I could filter them, give it time, and I'll also talk about it. I think having a group of like either like a mentorship group or mastermind group or some kind of support group will help, having to filter these ideas and understand like, okay, well, technically this was a shit idea, or I see it, like, let's say you're passionate about something, you see it from a particular, like, your own perspective, you're excited about it, but you show it to someone who's not as excited about it as you are, or doesn't know about it. They're going to give you the straight answer. They're going to tell you, well, this and that, like, have you looked at it this way, or why this and why that, right? They're going to look at it with a beginner's brain in some ways. And I think you're going to have, it might give you better clarity, over your idea. So that's really I would say my process was just to train my brain, man, to just calm the F down with that many ideas. And that instant acting is actually a big mistake, like financial mistake, because you're not going to be doing great work with anything. Right. And if you're, I really embrace too, like, that's the thing. I think the more I went on with my business career is that I really embrace sustainability a lot more. Like, it's a big part of who I am. It's part of my core values. It's part of what I think a done by noon leader should go for. It's having something that can live forever. And in my office, I don't know if you saw it. I have it's a sketch, and it's a drawing from my friend Derek Rodenbach. And Derek's a cartoon artist. Like, he's an artist, and he was one of my mastermind students with Matt, actually. What was that? 2015, 2014.
Okay.
And he gave me that as a gift, and it's a sketch called "An Idea Lives Forever." And it's a skull, and there's like underneath the skulls, there's roots, and piercing the skull is that flower. And it's called "An Idea Lives Forever." And we started talking. I was like, yeah, but an idea can live forever. It can live forever doing nothing,
right?
Or it can live forever in a perspective of legacy. It's like, if you have an idea, how can it be sustainable and also outlive you, so you have something that has actually real impact, not just another idea, right? So I approach it, but I'm very more careful with my ideas now, because I go from that perspective of sustainability, even with my ideas. I feel like it was kind of not a shift, but it makes you think about the idea.
I can't remember who said it, but I remember hearing that. Maybe it was Derek Sivers. I can't remember. It was one of these leadership coaches who said, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no. And so that's the kind of, that's my guiding principles when it comes to ideas. Like, if I'm not super all in on it, that it's like, yeah, I want, like, that's the one, then it's going to be definitely not.
But even there, you have to, even like, for me, I need multiple fuck yes. Yeah. It's like, because I can get super excited about one thing, and like, with the next day, I might not be as excited about that, So I agree. It is, but you need to follow your gut feeling in some ways, right? It's, are you good? Are you good? Like, how would you rate your ability to filter things based on your gut feelings?
Better now with age than earlier on. I used to say hell yes to everything. I used to think that everything was an opportunity, and what could be bad about it. And so I used to say yes to everything. And that just left me burnt out with a bunch of good, mediocre to good things, but nothing great. And so I was very spread thin. And I think as I got older and as I started to understand business, I mean, you mentioned it a few minutes ago where you were talking about core values. If you can establish specific core values, like, for example, you have sustainability, like you're always looking for something that will create some type of sustainability, then you use that as your guiding force, or one of that, in addition to maybe some other things that are your guiding force to make your decisions. Whereas I think when you're just starting out, or if you're not as experienced, or if you really don't have a true vision or know what your core values are, then you say yes to everything, like what I did before. And that spread me really thin. And it was very difficult. I lost a lot of money too in trying to invest in ideas that later on I realized that I wasn't that passionate about, that wasn't a very good idea to begin with, and it wasn't unique. So that was that's basically now I have a better filter in terms of how I decide what to do. And a lot of it, like what you said, is based on core values.
Matt and I used to like, we had a little bit more woo woo approach back in the days with bioptimizers. Is that have you read David Hawkins' Power versus Force?
No, I've never read that book.
Yeah, so pretty much like says like, you know, everything is connected, and like the universe kind of has all the answers. And you know, like, have you heard about muscle testing?
Muscle testing, maybe.
It's like, you know, like, for example, like, I'm going to put your arm up and I'm going to apply resistance. I'm going to apply, like, I'm going to push on it and I'm going to tell you positive words, and you're going to, you know, you're going to be,
Oh, yeah. Is that what
you
that's
know,
called? I've heard of that before. Yeah.
yeah. So it's kind of it's a basic interpretation, but David Hawkins really has what's called the scale of consciousness, and it can scale something from 0 to 1,000. And this is like a thought, for example, there's an inquiry to, let's say, the database, the universe, and you can actually get an accurate reply, or you know, an accurate response, a yes or a no, right? Based on if it's, or you can calculate it. You can get a yes or a no, but you can actually put numbers to it. And we had Clayton, who was he was kind of an advisor slash coach, and we really used that to calibrate, call that calibration, but to calibrate ideas. And it was like, no, this is not good. This doesn't calibrate high, or this calibrates high. And then Matt and I had discussions about that, but it was bringing, you know, like we had it was opening the door to discussions about it. Okay. But you know, it's like when you have the gut feeling, you know, you feel it or you don't. That's kind of the physical response, the primal physical response to if you should do it or not, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Then if you train that, if you like, and say yes or no, right? And if you train that muscle, you can get actually more and more accurate about that. So we used to do that. It takes some time, and I mean, you should read about it. Like, I don't want to sound too woo-woo, like to our audience, but it's something that, you know, we use for bigger, I would say, decision or bigger ideas or things like that. You know, so we use the scale of consciousness. We use to calibrate, you know, these ideas, and it was real. Like, we never were wrong with it. That's the thing. Like, you know, I was skeptic, Matt less, but I was like, and then you see patterns. You're like, oh shit, okay, yeah, there's something to it. And I realized that, you know, listening to my physical response to things, so my gut feeling per se, was pretty much always a good thing. When I looked at it and was like, you know, I don't feel it. Yep. Like, and I couldn't explain it. And we always try to rationalize why, you know, oh no, like, it's actually a great opportunity, but you don't feel it. There's something. So I use that. I use my gut feeling a lot more now too. So if it's not a fuck, I feel it if it's a fuck yeah, but I want a confirmation it's a real fuck yeah too. You know what I mean? It's like taking the COVID-19 test, but it's a false positive. You know, you want to make sure, you want to double, triple check it. So yeah, so I try to use my gut feeling quite a bit, but trusting it and but monitoring it. You know, like how I respond to things.
Where do you find you come up with your best ideas? Like, what's something like, let's talk about the planner, for example.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come up with the idea for, well, I guess your system within the planner and then the planner itself?
Well, it's always like a response to something, right? For me, like, I'll always, first of all, I always liked paper planners. I always had paper planners. I always like prefer, I never got into apps per se, like to manage, because it didn't work for me. So I always was into that. But also I created my own system. So I have ideas as I'm going to analyze it and say, okay, well, how can I build it based on, for me, right, you know, for my own system? And that's always my train of thoughts, is that I don't look at something and then say, oh, I'm going to apply it, or I'm going to create my own version of that. That's not the way I process things. It's like, I'm going to do my own thing. Then I'm going to look for validation. So first, there's two ways to look for validation. First of all, you can test it with other people. Right. And for me, that's how I did it. When I started actually doing business coaching, I tested my own methodologies with my students, and I saw that it really, really worked well. And so that's a way. But also, I looked into patterns into the industry. I started reading some books on productivity. And I that's funny because I read books and I read things after I actually build my own things. And I saw the same problems that other entrepreneurs would have, or that most entrepreneurs would have, that I would think I was, that were only my problems. And you realize, oh no, it's a really bigger problem. Idea management, like the idea box, I came up with it. I came up with a system for myself, and I realized that, hey, there's patterns there. Like the entrepreneurial brain is actually a thing.
Yeah.
Like there's patterns in the way we operate as entrepreneurs. Like it's weird, right? Sometimes you're like, like you can't explain it, but we are wired in a certain way. And I do believe that we have, no matter where you're from, whatever your background, if you are a creative type of entrepreneur, man, or with a founder's mindset per se, you're like, we have the same type of patterns, right? So what worked for me worked for others. And I was like, okay, validation right there, and then also, but it takes time, to create something, like to create practical art. That's the way I like to call it. It's like, hey, you refine it. It's a process.
Okay. So how many iterations of the system have you gone through before you knew that it was
hundreds?
Yeah.
If I would recall, I mean, it's hundreds of iterations. I mean, it's always refining and optimizing. And even there, I still optimize it. I still optimize my things and my systems, the way I operate. I optimize it based on the seasons. I optimize it based on the context that I'm in. That's the thing. I see it like I found a sustainable base. It's like when you work out or when you do anything, it's like, how can you find a sustainable base? And then you optimize it based on context. And that's the way I approach it. I was like, I have a sustainable base. Like the ethic methodology is simple, it's 4 steps, but then I can adapt what I'm going to do within the methodology, or the way I'm going to use the methodology based on the context of the time, or my goals or my ambitions at the time. So yeah, it always, change. I always rethink it, and sometimes you start using it. It's like, oh, that would be better if I would use it that way, but as long as I got a strong foundation, there's no problem there.
Okay, so I have a question for you then. So I know, and I've experienced this before, and I know countless number of entrepreneurs have experienced this before. When you have an idea, how do you escape perfectionism and just take it to launch, and then determine and have the confidence to know that you're going to have to create another iteration of it, and that will be an ongoing process? Like, how do you
action over perfection, man? That's a motto that I embraced early on in my career. Action over perfection. Let's fucking put it out and see. Obviously, you're not gonna, like, I love running betas, for example.
Yep.
Like, remember, you were part of the beta group for the EFIC Certified Partner Program.
That's right.
It's like, it was not perfect. But now, like, a year later, we still add to it and we iterate things, and we realize, okay, well, actually my coaches need this and need that. So, but if I hadn't pushed it out, nothing would have happened. I would not have had that feedback. Right. So I love doing that. I'm comfortable with, like, being uncomfortable knowing that it will not be the last iteration. Like, for example, the planner.
Yep.
Like, the physical planner, after the first published planner, I think it's the 5th iteration. People won't notice. It's small things, a couple of things. Like, for example, the annual guideline, we had 6 at first, and now we moved it to 5. We downsized it to 5 because we realized that, 6 was more than often too much for people. And we wanted to, be even more, wanted to get people to think even more about smaller things, about, less things. So we reduced it to 5. It's not a big thing, but it's an iteration, and the way we explain things, or like, it's fine. You just get feedback. And as you use it, as you do it, you realize that, hey, I can change it or change that. Like, that's fine. I mean, you look at, we were talking about computers before recording this.
Right.
Like, you think like Apple is like, I'm going to launch a computer. I can't launch that because I know in 2 years it's going to be obsolete. And I mean, let's just wait until we get a better one. No, They launch it. They realize, hey, there's some bugs, there's some little fuck ups here and there. We'll fix that. We'll make it better. And it's part of innovation, right? But like, you have to be comfortable with that. I think perfectionism is just fear of judgment. I think the problem is not that you're perfectionist, that you just have fear of judgment.
Yeah.
And understanding you're not going to please everybody, and that's fine. That's all right. Just put out, like, make sure that what you put out, even though it's not perfect, it's still fucking great. That's the thing. Like, never put out something that's half-ass, but put out something that's already really good. And from there you can always fine tune it, but you have a solid, sustainable base to it.
Well, the advice that I give to some of the guys, well, all of the guys that I coach, I mean, this is my first piece of advice, is always to know your market. And if you know your market and you launch to your market, then you don't need to worry about what everyone else thinks. Solve their problem. Mm-hmm. And that's where you're going to get the most amount of feedback. That's where you're going to end up being successful, because you're catering to a specific market. When you get to the point, or when you start thinking too much about perfectionism and getting your idea out there thinking that it's for everyone, I think that's when you're going to fail. And that's when you're going to encounter problems, because you're not going to be able to create something, as you said, that's going to satisfy everyone. But if you just focus on your specific market, going 1 inch wide and 1 mile deep, and solving a problem for that specific market, then I think that is the trail to success.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the thing with ideas. Sometimes we're romantically attached to the idea, and there's no practical artistry that can, really come out of that. There's nothing practical that will come out, because you're just in love with it. But okay, yeah, but what exactly do you solve? What problem do you solve?
Yeah.
Right. So think about it. And then you can be like, okay, well, it solves a problem. Does it offer a sustainable base to solve people's problems? Right. And I think that's why a lot of young entrepreneurs fail to monetize on their passion, for example, is because they are romantically in love with their ideas, with their passion. And they're like, no, it's like, I'm helping. Yeah, but is it practical? Like, does it actually really solve something? And not just, it's just a display of passion. It's, I don't know. It's like, it's always a good idea to go on dates, but then you have to ask yourself, can I actually see myself marrying this person? Can I see myself having kids with this person? Can I see myself living for 50 years with this person?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this is the same type of thing, the same type of process you should have for your ideas.
That's great. I'm writing all of this down, because I think we may have just developed a process just by answering specific questions. Yeah. So I have, who is your market? Identify that, like with your idea. It's like, who is your market? The next thing is your idea. What problem does it solve for that market? And then the third question is it sustainable? Mm-hmm. Is this something that will be able to sustain you? Like, it's exactly like the marriage question or the dating question you said. Can you see yourself with this person for the next 50 years? Can you see yourself doing this, or will it have that type of staying power?
I think, I always go back to sustainability, and I hammer it, and I want to hammer it in, your heads. That's what really I want for all of you guys. But I'll ask yourself that even with marketing, for example. Right. Like, you see so many people just hammering tactics after tactics, and things that are relevant now, but they double down on it. But is it really sustainable? They hammer, the algorithm is favorable, let's double down. Yeah, it's great, but is it really sustainable? You know what I mean? And is it really sustainable for what you want to do? It's like forcing yourself to do something that you can't see yourself doing for a long time. And that's why we started creating the podcast, is that because the answer was yes, I could see myself doing that for a long time with you. But don't ask me to do like Instagram reels and stories and things like, I hate it.
Yeah.
But I know it's a great strategy. I know it's a great tactic, but I just don't see myself doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
So I that's the way I operate. And I don't know, probably you probably did the same thing. Sometimes it's easy to bend, in front of what you think you should do, you know.
Right. Right. Well, and then so we can circle back to core values and determine whether or not these actions are incongruent. Like, are they congruent with your core values and what it is that you want to achieve within your business? So I think
That's correct.
it's always good for people to come up with a set of core values for their business, even for themselves, to from a decision making standpoint. These days I've been diving deep into how people think and thinking processes and all of that, because I've been not really bombarded with a bunch of ideas, but there's a lot of things on my plate that I really want to do that I'm
Mhm.
trying to prioritize to make sure that I'm doing the most effective thing. And so that's kind of why I asked you the question, about core values and your process behind all of this, because I'm always curious as to how other people think and the processes and systems that other people use to be able to make decisions.
But the big thing too, and that I implemented within the effect methodology is the load management approach.
Right.
That's a big factor in deciding if I can take something or not. When I want to have the problem is with insta acting and you add too much to your plate, but guess what? You're not going to achieve everything, right? So knowing what your workload should be, the maximum workload, and if you can fit it and evaluate your priorities. And it's a good way because you can see that, okay, well, these are my real priorities. And then you have that idea and it's like, oh, I'm going to squeeze it in. Well, guess what? It doesn't fit within your buckets. You're already full. Well, guess what? It needs to go back to the idea box. And from there, time will do its thing. Time will dictate if that idea was actually a good thing to pursue or not.
If it was worth it,
So,
yeah.
managing the workload was huge, for me to understand that. But it comes with self-awareness. It comes with understanding, okay, here's my work pattern. This is how much I can take and how much I can have. And if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. That's it.
Good stuff, man. Nice.
Yeah, man. The ideas are that's the thing. I think that's the big edge of an entrepreneur, but it's also could be its biggest weakness.
Yeah, I agree. And then I think a lot of times this is what we talk about when we talk about paralysis through analysis. When you think too much about stuff and you get caught up on all these ideas and you don't take action on anything, but you have to find that balance as well. Not every idea is like what you said. Not every idea is a business.
I think, and also I think it depends on your the time of your life, that you're in. If you are, I mean, I don't know about you, but I simplify my business. I trim the fat all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I simplify. I try to simplify things every single time, and every year I'm like, well, I can even simplify this even more. It's always a game of simplification. And you realize that because I think you're always scared to that, oh, you need to chase the other thing to survive. But it's not. I think if from a base of sustainability, if you have a sustainable base, you're going to be fine. You know what I mean? Because you're going to have something solid that can last. And so do the exercise of consolidating the base as much as you can. So, the rest can be simplified.
Well, it's like that podcast that we did a few months ago talking about staying purposefully lean,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're always trimming the fat, trying to stay as lean as possible, making sure that every system, every process is optimized, and you're not doing things, you're not doing anything extra, not really extra, but anything frivolous or not necessary. So you're always looking at ways to make things more efficient.
That's correct, my friend.
Yeah, man.
All right, brother. I'm going to wish you a great week. I'm going to wish everybody a great week. Great talking to you as always, my friend. Try to manage these ideas responsibly.
That's right.
And implement things. If there's one advice now that implement the idea box and start playing with it and understand and look at your patterns. Look at how many ideas you get now and how many ideas that you're going to see if you train your if you use the idea box to train your entrepreneurial brain. It's going to be a big edge. Trust me. So keep using that, curate your ideas, come up with your own, your own style, but make sure you have a sustainable base always. All right, brother. Have a good week, bud.
Okay, my man. See you, bud.
You have just listened to the Done by Noon podcast. If you are interested in hearing more, do not hesitate to subscribe to our channel. Click on the 5 stars or check out our free tools and trainings at donebynoonpodcast.com. Thanks again for listening and stay awesome. We'll see you next time.